so we know where it is, and they shouldn't have to deal with that. They should just have to deal with the media wiki, the wiki itself, and then defining their own email address so that they can get, like if they lose their password, they can get it sent to them, and let them define their own password. Yeah, but that didn't work with the security model.
So is your vision for appliances one that spans more than a single virtual machine?
Eventually.
So this sort of argues for some kind of service then. You don't want to edit 17 different images and then stand them up and basically these things.
Sorry, what?
Well, so it seems like the suggestion there where you're basically editing the image in some way, and then if you're going to do this in multiple images or multiple virtual machines, that it almost argues for a service architecture with a service that these things contact or some authentication mechanisms and then get the parameters. Because as the number of images grows and the appliances that you're building, you've got this kind of end-by-end editing problem.
Right. Yeah, there needs to be some central directory service that contains the configuration, or you need to have a configuration management system that can just take care of all of this.
This is what OVF addresses this, and it's not necessarily the most wonderful thing in the world, but re-implementing what is quite likely to be a largely adopted standard would be kind of a poor idea. And the way they do that is they have this meta config that basically gives you keys and types of what you can configure, and the thing that launches the instance or that consumes that OVF is to prompt the user for values for that.
Right.
And then they pass down the values to the machine, and the machine is then supposed to read them and make it so.
Right.
So, and if you're looking to do that, we should really be looking at least to be compatible with something.
It is.
Right.
Is the appliance the right granularity?
Is what? What do you mean?
The right granularity.
Is what right granularity? An appliance.
Yes, an appliance.
Okay. What do you mean?
I mean that.
I think I agree with the question.
It's the most useful level to be thinking at when you're defining a conceptual unit, a solution.
As opposed to what?
As opposed to the service.
So sets of appliances, basically. Sets of virtual machines that make up a...
So if I want to run a wiki and a mail server, do I have to run two appliances?
Exactly.
But another way, do appliances compose?
For OVF, they do. I mean, in that is taking into consideration OVF, so it's not something just. But yeah, you can have multiple images inside a single OVF. An OVF describes a virtual container.
But it applies a single server, right? It's a single instance running.
It can have multiple. It can have multiple images defined inside this one OVF, and then you configure networking between them, and it defines networks that they can be on, and it defines, and each one of them gets access to the other one's data, so they can kind of talk. They know where to find the other server.
Right, but that still means that you're running an instance for each service.
Right. Coming from an EC2 world, it's a cost issue.
Right.
Okay.
Remember, there's a cost to each instance, particularly.
I know appliances is a cool term right now, but I think when I come to Ubuntu, I say I want to install MySQL or I want to install Apache, and it comes so beautiful defaults. I guess that's one of the great things about Ubuntu is it just comes up very nicely. So I think the appliance thing is that maybe if I want a mail server, maybe it's not just installing postfix. Maybe it's installing postfix and dovecod and whatever other options there are with these other options that are all configured very well. And bundling that as an image, as an appliance image, is not necessarily the best option for me if I want to run a mail server and a web server on the same instance.
Okay. Yeah.
So having some kind of a task level or where I can pass it options also. I want the mail server and this is the default relay mail server.
That's a big question for me is where is a virtual appliance going to be preferred over a task cell? Rather, the usual option is to start with a clean base, which we publish as the Ubuntu server, AMI, and then apt-get install whatever else you want on top of that.
Exactly.
And putting those in task cells is the way we've traditionally solved this. Tarring this up into an OVF or into an image and then selling or producing or providing or offering this as a ready-to-go appliance is a different model, but whose problem are we trying to solve?
It's really cool from a marketing perspective.
I have proposed answers to that.
Okay. And the question is actually posted on IRC, I see, by someone listening in. What's the target audience for Ubuntu appliances?
Right. So this depends on who we're talking about. We're trying to solve some problems on behalf of different people. I don't know what to call this section, so I'm just going to put it there. So here's one goal that I'd like to put forward for discussion. From a system administrator's perspective, we wanted to reduce complexity in deploying and maintaining applications within their infrastructure. And to try to illustrate what I mean here are some principles like this to push architectural decisions upstream, meaning toward application developers rather than system administrators. So rather than having to decide at the time that you deploy the application, this is how I need to set it up. I want my data storage to be here. I need these infrastructure components. This is how the network should be set up, and so on. With more of those types of decisions upstream toward developers, so that when you receive the application, it is already in a form which is ready to run and set up in a way which the developer feels is the appropriate way to do it. So obviously you can still also, people can produce their own custom appliances and make different decisions for that, but there should be a default case which is easy to deploy and easy to maintain.
Yeah, but I think it's interesting as well because appliance usually comes from the description of a refrigerator, right? That you put in your home and it just works, and and your microwaves and so on. But usually the microwave doesn't talk to the refrigerator, right? So it's an interesting thing because we like that boxed setting, but in the case of services, in the case of the cloud, we usually want to get services interacting within them and get a more defined and flexible topology going. So the appliance is usually a very static thing, right?
It would be nice to have, if you have multiple things that could use a database, then if they could just discover that you already have a database appliance thing running, and they could start using that.
Right.
But it really
exactly.
It kind of
exactly.
Yeah. It's a much more complex problem. So
hang on. If you're already running a separate instance for, say, a web server or Moodle or your wiki software, why bother sharing your databases? There's no extra overhead really to install an extra MySQL within that, is it? I mean, there's something really nice about keeping each service separate. So if your web server craps out, you don't lose your mail
There's
server.
something very nice from a theoretical point of view. From my personal experience, there's very few servers we run that don't do multiple things. That's my real world experience. I agree, I'd love to have a separate server for every single service I run, but that's not the real world.
Do you actually think you're the target audience of appliances?
I don't know.
Well, is that...
No.
Why don't you tell us why that is?
The appliances.
Yes, if you can make it really easy to install and set up
The only one example is
mail
separate
server.
media with your client, so no. Because we use one.
Yeah, but I mean, do you think you would actually use any of the available appliances, or do you think you would just install it yourself?
So actually,
We haven't defined what they are yet. Let's not ask James that question. Can you explain why you feel you end up in that situation? Why do you end up with multiple things running on the system?
mostly because it's an efficiency thing. The machines are overspec essentially to run just one service.
You're dealing with physical hardware.
Yes.
Ask the question.
So if we're not dealing with physical hardware, though, what really confuses the heck out of me is, are these appliances ready for a crash-only model? Because I don't understand how you can run MediaWiki in a crash-only model where your database can go away, where your logs can go away, and you have no way to recover them. Is this appliance set up to actually run in the cloud? I mean, it's seriously not a facetious question. I don't understand.
No, the current proof of concept thing isn't, but the goal is for it to...
Yes, that is the goal.
That is the goal.
Yeah.
So the goal is that these appliances somehow are...
I don't know if crash only is quite as far as we've thought ahead, but definitely to run in the cloud and use an appropriate storage model for that, yes.
It seems like there's a couple of different audiences here. So if you're developing, you sort of want your own appliance, right? You want to stand this thing up. It's not operational, right? You just want to be able to make sure that you're exercising the APIs correctly and you're debugging or something. The sharing there makes that a different problem than what you want to do is deploy an appliance that's going to go into operation where there's thousands of users, and you've got to have logging, audit trails, so on and so forth. I think really, the appliance is not one size fits all. There are usage cases that define what kind of appliance you get.
But it should be one size fits most, or one size fits many.
I think
We want something that's
categories of usage,
reusable for a broad category of users.
Is it part of the appliance definition to run in the cloud or in a VM, or could it run anywhere? Because in our definition of an appliance, we didn't
If
define
anything, I'd say we should be biased toward running in the cloud. Shouldn't necessarily, we shouldn't necessarily exclude, running one-to-one on physical hardware as well, but
It should support the cloud at least.
it should. In fact, it should be advantageous to use.
That's one of the administrative details that you really want to hide from end users. Where's my storage? I don't care.
Yeah, which is a cloud model. Right?
Well, so I think that's. I agree with you that it should be really simple for people to decide where is the storage. But I think the reality that where's my storage, I really don't care. I think it's a very rare one, right? Because people usually want to know how well, if it crashes, where's my data? Where's my company information that was in the wiki, and I really need it to put somewhere else. So I think the case where you really don't care about the data at all and it can crash and go away, it's.
Yeah, I see your point, but consider an enterprise model where you have a data center in London and users in Sydney and Mumbai. The person who cares about where that storage is in London. He actually doesn't want those remote offices to be worrying about that, because they're not going to have to fix it when it breaks.
Mm-hmm.
If you can package up that image, send it to them as an appliance and have them use it, then that's a net plus.
Right, I see.
Yeah. Can somebody try to capture that? I think that's an interesting use case for appliances that are created within an enterprise centrally and then run in branch offices. I'd like to put another maybe basic principle here for discussion, which is that in an appliance, the operating system should be maintenance-free. And I mean that in the same loaded way that you see this term in other industries, I think, where like if you have a car battery which is labeled maintenance-free, what that means is you can't open it up and and add water to it or anything. It's just it's impossible. And so it's a little bit of a strange way to label it, but fundamentally you should not have to care about the operating system, and in some ways it may not be appropriate to allow you to mess with the operating system.
So you trash it when it breaks.
Yeah.
Does that mean installing updates automatically?
Send it to the vendor and have
Not installing updates at all?
It may.
Okay.
So this sounds similar to what Amazon is doing with Elastic MapReduce, where they have the images predefined. You pass in some code that's around the map and the reduce phases, but you can't get root access. You can't look at the system with them running it.
Yeah, that's more an application level framework, right? Where you're developing an application for that.
Well, you're developing two pieces of code.
Yep.
And you pass it in and you pass some data in. But it's an appliance in the sense that everything else is predefined for you. You can't configure it or manage it.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think their case is going towards the software as a service direction, right? Well, so not in the 100
in
days.
the Elastic MapReduce, yes,
Yeah.
software as a service.
Yeah.
In the previous session, we were saying what we would like to do is try to avoid to rebundle image. While right now, when I'm thinking about an appliance, it's basically a rebundling of an image.
Well, with what Matt just said, if that's a requirement, then you wouldn't be giving them root access, right? It would be, here's the mail server.
You don't log in.
No,
right.
I'm not
You administer it.
Or any other use.
You administer your web interface.
But the question is, basically what we are going to be doing, and each time we will produce an appliance,
Yes.
we will be providing an image.
Correct.
And each time
Not
we will-
necessarily. It may not be in the form of an image that's not been
Okay,
determined.
so it's not a term.
implementation.
Figure yourself out through.
So sorry, by maintenance free, does that mean you don't want people to be able, I mean, do you literally mean the case of like the battery where you are physically unable to open it up?
You can't log in.
Okay.
And presumably neither can anyone else.
Not necessarily, because from the point of view of ISV, if you extend the appliance analogy out, if you buy a washing machine, you can get it serviced.
Yeah.
You can pay
Someone's
to a company to come and...
Okay, sorry I said it.
No, but then, I mean, there are some ISVs who they just, we ship it, you take it, if it breaks, you've got to buy another.
Right, it's a sealed package.
Right.
That kind of maintenance, I mean, I may not be the target audience, and no, that's fine, but for what it's worth, that maintenance free would make me run it through.
Yeah, but it depends what the life cycle of the appliance is. If you're at a conference, you just want to spin something up so you can use a wiki for the day, but at the end of the day you shut it down, then actually getting a security update, if you're running something over a long period of time, then yes, you'd be interested to know that it's not got security goals.
You're already providing a self-service API for people to deploy these things if they want to.
Right.
So I think
Yes,
it's not...
but that's them to run. That's
Exactly.
not me to run.
Exactly. That's it.
But that's them to run it in a little sandbox. I'm not letting people run that and spin it up and
But that
run
little sandbox is their world.
That's fine. I'm glad they enjoy their world, but it's not the world that the rest of the world can see.
But there might be a lot of them, right? There might be 100,000 little sandboxes. So the scale there is just
Sure. I mean, it's fine. That's fine. That's not something I could use in my job.
Right.
Which is fine.
This is a higher level abstraction than what you're working with. Yeah. So another idea is that the service architecture should be defined as part of the appliance. So where you have a service that's composed of multiple, like if you have a database service and a directory service and so on, whatever you need is included with the appliance and pre-configured there. And not only that, we've had this idea that that's not implicit. It's not just that you've pre-installed MySQL and configured it, but that this is actually something that can be introspected by software. So that you can the appliance itself or programs which are ready to manage it know that there is a MySQL component to this. There's a database and it lives here, and this is how it works, and this is how it's connected to the application. I'm seeing some sort of browse. Am I not explaining this well?
So I just want to make sure that, are you talking about a situation where if I were to, as an appliance designer, I decide, okay, here are the components of this appliance and this is what I put out there?
Yes.
Okay, because that was what I was hoping you were saying, or whatever, is that there would be a model where I, as a consumer, would have the ability, there was discussion, okay, shouldn't the appliance be just a database and everything that's underneath it, versus yet another appliance, let's say an application, another two of them that have to talk?
The answer is both, and we'll get to the second one.
Okay, so as a consumer, I'm going to say, okay, what I really want is one appliance that has X, Y, Z, and then that becomes one appliance that has all these things in it.
Yes. So what I'm using here with this point is that there should be an architecture which is shipped with the appliance by default. This is the way that it works, and you can examine it. So just as Scott was describing with OVF, there is a simple descriptor which says this has an image with an instance which runs this image. There's another one. They're connected over a network, and so on. There's an architecture that's predefined there, which when you start it up, that's what it looks like. And then, if we separate that out, it can be examined and changed. Yeah, examined and acted upon by software. So if the appliance may be plumbed in a certain way when it's initially deployed, but it should be possible to change it and to do that in a programmatic and standardized way, rather than having, remember, the operating system is maintenance free. You're not going to go in and add and remove packages and edit configuration files and things like that. If there are changes which can be made, they'll be exposed through a higher level abstract interface.
Can you give an example?
So
let's use the menu.
There's MediaWiki deployed EC2 that runs the relational database service from Amazon.
Instead of using its built-in whatever database you use.
If you have a load balancer and there's a load balancer appliance and you have an Apache appliance in the back, and you bring up a new Apache instance, the load balancer should automatically detect the Apache instance and know that it can now route request to the new appliance as well.
Okay. But will the image contain different packages then? Or, so for instance, an image could contain MySQL or not contain MySQL because it relies on a storage which is already in the cloud. Does it mean that when I build the appliance, it was built into the appliance changes according to my configuration? So I have a storage, and one storage which might be all in one package with MySQL in, means that to get an image which contains MySQL. Or I might have a second case where I'm using S3, whatever other storage I want to use. Still same application, I'm using different storage, so I might end up with different packages part of it.
Yeah, it should be able to, if someone wants to go over the trouble of developing an appliance which can talk to different storages, it should be possible to do that.
So basically you create a definition, and then when I compile this definition, I end up with different images according to what my initial configuration is.
You end up with a different result,
right, so
whatever
you're
it
actually
is.
getting a golden image anymore. You're not using a golden image. You're compiling and creating on the fly.
Yeah, that's the thing. You're very recipe-based appliance.
This is not Arpath again. Are we just not reinventing what Arpath does? They have both a compile thing and then a runtime system that will dynamically configure, based on what your specification is. This is exactly the problem.
The ideas are related, yes.
Yes, they're related. It's configuration management, right? So it is Arpath and the other configuration management tools will certainly have a way to solve
and you have a factory that compiles these things, so you get different versions of the appliance. You get one that runs in EC2 and then one that doesn't, one with this service, or you do it dynamically at runtime, but then you have to have a runtime system that basically goes.
Right, except that I think just to draw the line between the two discussions, I think the difference is that in Chef and Puppet's case, you don't have an appliance, right? You don't have that boxed concept, which is a service that you can plug in.
Chef and Puppet. You need something. There are tools that you can use to do this configuration at runtime, but you basically need a whole framework.
Well, it's true, you could bundle everything, assuming that you have a one-box machine where everything has to be in there, and then at runtime you can detect whether different storage based on
the environment,
and the environment, and then so you still have a golden image, and then at runtime you decide I turn off the database because another database is available, but the MySQL model is there, it's just off.
Right.
Is this any different from what we were discussing 2 hours ago about boot time configuration of EC2 images?
It's related, I'd say.
Yeah, that's a tool which may come into play in actually building it.
I was just going to note that under publishing, I've taken a note that there's unique image per appliance and then some task cell meta package thing that takes a base image and appliance size. And maybe that's done by user data at boot time.
Yeah, an appliance could be constructed using that boot time config framework. Am I answering your question?
Yes.
Or am I if we want to move from the system administrator to the developer, we want to make their lives easy as well. Gabi is lagging a bit. All right. So we also want to provide advantages for developers and ISVs in this model, not just with system administrators. So we want to make it easy for them to deliver their application to users and prospective users, to be able to demonstrate the application using an appliance in a way which has a very, very low barrier to entry. So here's an appliance, try out the software, see if you like it, then maybe we can sell you something. And also to simplify their support burden, because they're shipping a standardized configuration, not just bundling application and operating system, but also providing the architecture description, that they have much more standardization in how their application is deployed and much better understanding of what their user's environment is through that.
Even if you have multiple machines, even if their solution requires multiple machines to be deployed and so on, you can do that. And it's also about, I guess, allowing ISVs and developers in general to provide an appliance which can sit within a larger environment and you can provide knowledge about how that appliance can be deployed. So, as an example, if an appliance, perhaps taking the example we just mentioned, if we have an Apache and suddenly I want to offer the same through the same protocol a different web server which can be used in that same environment, the ISV might have a way to just define how to make that new web server sit within that environment. So they can add knowledge on the appliance side, right? They can add information about how to deploy within an environment on the appliance side.
Would that be auto-discovery boot time or something? So you boot the appliance and it finds out an environment which provides an alternative Apache and actually use that one.
Right, exactly.
So you want to have auto-discovery capabilities.
Exactly, auto-discovery is a good
And do you
point.
think it's required to have some sort of proxy services in the appliance itself? So instead of running Apache, you run a proxy web server and a proxy storage, which then rules things.
Yeah, definitely. It might be one appliance, right?
Yeah.
Might be one appliance that you want to plug into that environment as well.
So for example, if you have a web cluster, you add another web server, and the web server is going to connect to the cluster automatically and going to sync up everything.
Right. The potential for that, right? I mean, I'm not going to pretend that doing that is going to be simple, right? The developer is going to have to do a lot of work to make sure that an appliance can be so dynamic and can react to load and so on. But at least the framework should enable that kind of use case.
So as a developer or as a sysadmin, with service availability being 100%, you don't need the logs in the box, but how do you do root cause analysis? What happens when you get in a case where you need to do RCA in an appliance?
Well, I don't have a strong feeling about not allowing people to get in the appliance at all. I can see cases. We have an appliance, just an example. We have been working with an appliance for, well, let's say an image for landscape. So the hosted version of landscape is actually not a package, it's an image. We deploy the image and people run it on KVM. And we offer, even though it's pre-set up, even though there's an external way to configure the appliance, the image and so on, we offer a way for the administrator to go in and to check out logs and to.
So there'll be an abstracted way to add things to check config or modify service, modify init. Because a lot of things. So when you start talking about enterprise, you're getting into.
You're cracking the case at that point.
Yeah.
Like, how do you do root cause analysis on your phone?
Well, I can ask the same thing.
The answer is generally you don't.
But I mean, the thing is, we're getting into detail here. Yeah. The thing that we really need to iron out first is, first of all, we've established the fact that we need to, we can't rely upon package defaults. We need a way of customizing them, and there needs to be some user interaction there. So we need to solve that, but also a reliable way of automating the builds. Because I'm assuming the landscape one, that's handcrafted. Yeah, and I think these need to be something which can be rolled via a script, or some way. And neither of them, we are getting quite far into the session and going into details about different stuff. But they to me, it seem two core things that really need to come out of this session.
The goal of the session that we agreed at the beginning was a common vision for Ubuntu appliances. What is an appliance and what makes it interesting? And what sort of attributes does it have? What are the general principles involved? I actually didn't expect to get into any implementation at all here, and we will quite likely schedule some follow-up sessions for that this week. But this is more high level.
But I agree with your point, your perspective that you need a way to rebuild whatever means we come up with to define, let's say, an appliance or a service that we want to provide. I agree with you. We have to. It cannot be ad hoc. You cannot just build a thing by hand and have no means for reproducing it. The appliance service or whatever should have let's say a source package, right, that defines how to rebuild the same structure.
I agree with both of you. I just think it's out of scope for this session.
Another high-level requirement would be like backups, so off-site backups. So maybe I run my appliance on EC2, but I need to have, for part of this requirement, to back up somewhere else that I can turn the PC2 goes down entirely, and or I lose my account there, then I can restore the data on another appliance in rack space or something.
So that's something which is implicitly enabled by this model. So if the service architecture can be introspected and storage is abstracted, so you have programmatically you can examine this thing and understand where its storage is, where it's storing its data, and then back it up. So you can implement a generic backup mechanism which can back up any appliance.
Is there merit in trying to introduce Ubuntu One into this, the storage mechanism for backups and things?
So I think again, I think it's about Ubuntu One being Ubuntu One or not. I think it should have a way to back up in some place, right? So if you do Ubuntu One guys develop a plugin that extends whatever system you come up with, so that they get that data which is of common knowledge, it's public, it's GPL, and they get that data and put in Ubuntu One to give a hand, just to be easy to do. I think it's a valid use case, and people could come up with similar structures for Jungle Disk or anything else or S3 directly maybe, right? So I think it's a valid use case.
Well, another way to look at it is one of the advantages of appliances is that you don't have to worry about backup. The storage is a virtual resource.
But is that the case?
Backup.
Well, my requirement was I'm okay with it being a black box if that's the definition here. But as long as I can say everything is running on EC2 now, but I might want to switch to somebody else, so give me a black box backup that I can now take this data, run the appliance somewhere else, and recover.
Yeah, that's under the challenges is persistent storage. That was something we saw with MediaWiki and the other appliances that we.
Well, even persistent storage on EC2 is great. Yeah, that's one of the challenges, and you saw that that's great. But if I lose my Amazon Web Services account, I can't get access to my data. Right?
Yeah, I think backup and persistent storage is.
Oh, so okay, that is something new then, because that's actually backing up outside the.
That's only offsite. Offsite meaning outside of Amazon Web Services.
Yeah, meaning in a different
Amazon sites.
Different administrative domain.
Yeah, I think it's kind of implied by the ability to move the system to something else. Yeah.
Go to
But okay, it's hard for me to get my head around that that's a responsibility of the appliance to do that.
So it should not be a responsibility of. Hopefully, we will offer a good advice of how to do that in a generic way, right? It's not going to be. It's not. We hope that every appliance builder will not have to come up with their own means of doing that. We just think that there's value in offering the appliance builder and both sides of the equation actually, right? The appliance builder and the final user of the appliance means for having their data in a more tangible way, so that they can actually put in whatever they want to run the same system. They can put it elsewhere. If they decide to change service providers or infrastructure providers, they should be able to have ownership of their data.
So is there a difference between, a terminology difference between appliance and platform as a service?
I think one may be built in as a function of the other. I think there is a distinction, in my opinion.
Platform as a service is not configured.
I view platform as a service as being more than one, right? I view an appliance as being a single function refrigerator or microwave. I view platform as a service as being a combination of appliances.
Yeah, it could be.
Okay. That's interesting. So I think that I have heard other views on what platform as a service is. So maybe have some terminology confusion.
I don't know if we define what an appliance is here, so I don't know if there is that.
Yeah, with that description of it, yes, I agree.
Right.
So another question we may want to ask is whether an appliance contains only configuration plus packages, or can it contain some binary which is not coming from packages?
Like what?
Like an ISV that wants to produce an appliance but doesn't want to create a dev. Something etc.
There's no mention of a dev anywhere.
Yeah, it sounds like implementation detail.
I happen to know that VMware, they even ended up forcing like whoever wanted to build an appliance for their VMware thing to actually build the packages for the distribution that they were building on. So if they can do it, we sure can.
I didn't.
I'm just saying that they've gone through a lot of research in this area as well, and they ended up, doing that. So if VMware can pull that off, then we should be able to as well.
Do you think we'll be able to convince people to package stuff to put inside an appliance?
VMware did it.
Is the developers not using it?
I'm not making this up. I talked to them.
Well, that's fine, but if you're making a little black box appliance, there's no benefit from the software you're putting inside VMware.
Well, that depends on how you expect to handle upgrades.
In terms of building the package in a reproducible way.
Exactly.
Well,
The
there's
appliance
that.
itself.
If you've got a binary that you just drop in, that's the final stage of your building script.
There's that, and then there's the way that you have to deal with security
Is there an
upgrades.
application that you interact with on a day-to-day basis, which is a binary that you just drop into place?
No. But for example, say you've got a whole bunch of web stuff, so the fact that it's binary is irrelevant. So it could be like a whole bunch of PHP. You're going to put the time to package in some PHP which is just going into a directory, or you're just going to copy into the directory. It's going to be a black box.
Right. So let's look at it from a high level. I think we need to define some way to. It's just like he was described, right? I think we need some way to rebuild the appliance in a reproducible way, right? Packages is one way you understand to put things in the system in a reproducible way.
I love things to be packaged. I'm a big fan of things
Right.
to be packaged. I'm just not convinced that you'll persuade appliance builders.
If I can short circuit what I think you're getting at, if the package would be trivial, then the person doesn't even need to know that they're creating a package.
That would be true.
If you're just dropping files into place, then that can be abstracted away.
But additionally, how many appliance applications do we have, non-free software ones, in the canonical partner repositories? There's actually not that many. So if it's trouble getting them into there, where would they be? In another ISV archive or something? I'm just trying to think that we don't already have appliance applications in the canonical partner ones, so where else would they be? I think packaging would be great, but
from whose point of view are you asking that question?
Well, what I'm saying is if we insist on everything doing and then to be packaged.
Okay, I really don't want to get hung up on that. But if I'm a developer and I want to make an appliance, if creating a package is one of the steps along the way to that, then so be it. That's entirely separate from what's in the canonical.
Okay. But then if it is going to be as packages, in order to answer Soren's point of being able to handle upgrades, there does need to be a repository for this stuff. So are we going to?
Not necessarily. We don't necessarily upgrade the packages that are in an appliance.
Well, that's the thing. How do you security updates?
What you could do is, for instance,
using packages is the only really sane, predictable, well-known way that we have to apply security updates to anything. The D package is very well defined in the way that it deals with.
I think Eric might differ on that.
But the thing is, what's the point of bringing a package if you don't have a repository to back it up with? To actually roll out upgrades.
Right. If you don't have a repository to back it, then
there is no point in having a package. I think having a package is better, but unless there is a repository to back it up, there's no.
We're arguing about a design choice that we haven't made. So
What if you have a generic database, for instance, package, which then
I don't want to talk about this.
Huh?
I am not taking a position on whether or not that packaging is a prerequisite for building an appliance.
What I mean is not a package that, for example, represent actually MySQL or anything. I have a proxy database package, which and then I get a task cell, so that, for instance, you take MediaWiki have MediaWiki as a package, and a task cell that creates a MediaWiki appliance. In the task cell, MediaWiki depends on my proxy database package. The proxy database package, once we create an appliance, has this type of proxy switcher at runtime, whatever, and it includes MySQL as a backup if nothing else is available on the cloud.
We have less than 10 minutes remaining in the session. Is there anything which has been put forward in terms of the general vision here, which people disagree with, or something that's missing from it that we should be considering?
Security updates.
Okay.
Which kind of ties in black box thing.
Right.
So would you, with the expectation, I made this too detailed, so you're either going to be updating an existing thing, or having it updating itself, or saying there is a new fixed image available, you would restart it.
But you may expand, so you may expand that to just compliance. Maybe it's not just security updates, maybe it's compliance.
Right. So some aspects of compliance make it easier. You know exactly where the data is, for example, and you can move it and you can have control over that. Similarly, if the architecture is sufficiently abstracted, then the operating system should be a replaceable component, right? So you should be able to take away this image and replace it with a newer one.
Is that how you would deal with situations of actual upgrades to the platform upon which the image runs? In other words, so right now you run EC2 or UEC, is that correct?
I don't think we've. Yes.
So as an example, so we're at this release. There's a new release of UEC with the next release of the Ubuntu server. Is there a concern that existing appliances, something needs to be done to them so they can run on the next release of Ubuntu server of UEC? In other words, is that something that would be the responsibility of the person who put the appliance together to begin with? Is that somehow Canonical's responsibility? Is that the responsibility of the user? Where is that?
There is an API which exists between the appliances and the environment in which they're running, and so there will be API compatibility considerations. In terms of whose responsibility that is, I think that it falls jointly between who's responsible for in this case, the cloud environment, which is Ubuntu, and the developer. These APIs are contracts, right? And if either side needs to move, then there needs to be agreement or at least information exchange to move forward. If I change my API, I need to do it in such a way that it enables developers who are using that API to respond appropriately. Whether that's updating their application or just being able to stay back with the old API or just noticing that there's been a change and blowing up, then there are various degrees to which you can make those guarantees.
And some kind of information, so I as a user, hey, here's an appliance, cool. I need to know, well, can it run on this version of a platform, or to make sure that it can actually run whatever word version I happen to be using. As some kind of, whether it's something in the name of the appliance or some information about it that I know I can go and check.
Yeah.
So one thing that maybe on I just can't see it is we don't seem to have a defined target audience for this, which is particularly important. Or maybe we do and I missed it.
So we have two so far. One is system administrators, and the other is developers and ISVs. So you're talking about being more specific than that.
Yeah.
Right. What type of system administrator and what type of developer?
Yeah. Kind of almost user stories like that. Almost to get an idea of what kind of system administrator.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, because even as system administrator might use it in two completely different ways. You might just want to see, okay, if I were to make a serious deployment of this, what would it work like? What would I see, how, and all that? And then when you decided that you actually wanted to deploy it properly, you would go and install Ubuntu server regularly and apt-get install the package. Or you might, or the other scenario is that he actually wants to use this in production.
Yeah.
That's completely different, really.
Yeah, that's right. That's a good point.
And it might depend in production on what size of business he has, all the different requirements that there are for enterprise versus.
As a goal, I would like to see James as a potential user of the system. Just my personal feeling about.
I think it's more going to be suited for people who don't have changes of experience. That's the whole point. Is it's somebody where you've got one guy who's working for a small company, doesn't have much experience. He's mainly does desktop support, but he happens to do the server side of stuff as well. And he's been told he needs to get a service up and running, and he doesn't have the time and the ability to go and do it. He needs to press a button and have the service up and running as quickly as possible.
But I think there's a danger in mixing the concept of a system administrator and someone that has very little knowledge about what they're doing. I think the appliance concept, if it doesn't apply to people that understand what they're doing, I don't know, it feels like it feels like a dangerous path. It just feels like we're actually, it's just a trial, and once they actually want to do it for real, they will go somewhere else. So I think it sounds like we should be trying to make it possible for people to have a long-running appliance or whatever. The framework should be supporting long-running instances that people want to actually continue using it. There are advantages for people to continue using it. Otherwise, ISVs,
I agree.
they'll not buy into just demos.
The use has got to be ongoing, but I think in terms of identifying the type of system administrator, what environment they're in, what kind of level of skill they have. And if we go right to the top and say the first thing we do is go to a web interface. The reason is that sysadmin, they don't have the skill, they shouldn't have to have the skill and knowledge to go any lower than that. So, in terms of the environment, the vast bulk of people are not, who use appliances, I imagine, are not going to be working on a large team of sysadmin where they've got a very diffuse range of skill that's going to be, whereas one guy has to do everything.
And this, to me, is a little bit about differentiating these roles within an organization. So I see someone like James as being able to focus on the infrastructure that's needed to support the workloads that the organization needs, and where it's appropriate, enabling people to actually run things on that infrastructure in a self-service fashion. So if there is a prepackaged appliance that does what someone wants in the marketing department, then within parameters that are established by an IS department, they can roll that out themselves.
Well, actually, not the way the image store is currently built, because it's only seen by the admin.
Yeah, that's an implementation issue that we've currently got.
And for a different bit of technology than what we're talking about.
Right. So this is, it's where we've actually got the end user. It's the appliance is not just the sysadmin developer. It's also for the actual person who's going to be consuming the technology. Who actually is going to be using the wiki, who's going to be sending the email and so on.
So we also haven't really looked at who is actually designing and rolling these. Who's the actual audience for actually for this spec? Is it the central server team, or is it basically anyone that wants to roll their own image and make it available onto the internet? I mean,
at this level that we're talking about, I think it's the Ubuntu project. We want to have to define a vision for this, which people can understand and agree with, and help to build tools that actually help fulfill this vision. Did I answer your question?
Yes. There's quite a few vocal people in the community that want to build appliances, some of them in IRC listening and participating along. So I think it would be healthy to ensure that they're included in this. This is a continuing discussion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a later stage of this process where we would lay this out in more detail for the developer audience, for the system administrator audience, to explain how it's actually used, and that will depend on what how it's implemented in the end. I think that's time. It's 5 minutes till.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.